A new report says that Amazon is planning to launch, quote, tariff pricing on products so you can see exactly how much more you have to spend when you're buying a product made outside the U.S. Now, the White House has called this hostile against the U.S. and against the Trump administration, a hostile act, indeed, but Amazon is denying it. They're saying that it's not true. This report is false, but it does highlight a serious concern that has been in the news this morning, and that is, will we face shortages? Now, one story that's come up quite a bit is a rumor circulating over a conversation Trump had with several CEOs in the Oval Office some weeks ago when he announced these massive tariffs on China, 145% in total. Several CEOs met with the president to say there will be empty shelves, that so much of what we get is made in China, not just core goods, but also components of goods even manufactured in the U.S., that this will cause supply shortages across the board. And it's not just the tariffs on China, it's the tariffs across the board. You're going to walk into a Target, shelves are expected to be empty. Now, Donald Trump's approval rating is down. And it's not just from these, look, I read like ABC News and Washington Post polls. I don't believe those for a second, but Rasmussen, we learned to pronounce it correctly, by the way, has Donald Trump down 4 points. It's not the worst approval rating in the world, and Rasmussen has been pretty dang accurate as it pertains to these elections. But it does show that Donald Trump's approval rating has declined this month as tariff concerns, economic concerns continue to grow. Now, Ray Dalio, Billionaire, he appeared on Tucker Carlson some weeks ago, and he said that we're in some kind of civil war. Something is happening. He's now put out another warning saying it's too late. It cannot be stopped. The tariffs that Donald Trump has put in place are going to result in a new global economic order, the likes of which we have never seen. Now, we don't know what that means. It could be very bad for us. It could be very bad for everybody. One proposed hypothetical is that nations around the world are going to start building economic ties with other countries, largely with China, as the U.S. is viewed as an unstable trading partner. That being said, we don't really know exactly what will happen. One thing I can say is that if we do see shortages in food production or any kind of core consumer good, Donald Trump will face a revolt. Absolutely. You can say anything you want about deportations, about Abrego Garcia, about Maryland men. None of that matters. The protests that we see in response to Doge, nothing. They don't have any real impact. But if it becomes nigh impossible for regular people to access food, if there are shortages, then you're going to see anger in the streets. You're going to see demands for change. And this may, depending on how long it goes, upset the midterms. But wait. There's more. You see, elections, they happen in month cycles, not year cycles. If everything gets really bad right now, then as people adapt to a just bad enough, but not bad enough to where they revolt, if Trump turns things around right before the midterms, look, I know it may sound a little jaded and cynical, but people are going to vote for Republicans in spades. If Trump improves things for people right before the midterms, then they're going to vote Republican. And it seems really dumb, right? Like, you can have a standard of living that is okay. Someone comes in and enacts policies which are damaging to that standard of living. People get really, really mad, and they're upset you did it. But then right before the election, you bring everything back to normal, and people will feel uplifted. They'll feel relieved. It's called the big ask. Now, whether or not Donald Trump is trying to pull off a big ask on the entirety of the American population remains to be seen. I'm not entirely confident that is the case, but we're going to break down the news we've got for you. I want to give a shout out to Steven Crowder in the Mug Club for rating this stream. Shout out to everybody. This is the Rumble Morning Lineup. I have your noon hour. My name is Tim Pool. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Joining us today at around 12:30, so about half an hour in, we're going to have Jason Fick, who is about to go to the Supreme Court over Section 230, and it's debated, hotly debated, but this could be an end to the immunity protections of big tech platforms. And a story we covered the other night, this may seem like it's inconsequential. Someone running for city council in Charlestown, West Virginia, Courtney Nill. It's a city of 7,676 people, I believe. Small number, right? Facebook banned her deleting her account and locking her profile, her campaign account, for no reason. Now, she's a conservative, and she's running in a conservative city against a progressive. Why is Facebook interfering in such a small election? It makes no sense. And there's no reason why she would have gotten banned. They said she was impersonating herself right before the election is to take place. Now, this story may seem inconsequential. Who cares about city council in Charlestown? Until you realize Facebook's probably doing this in every small town, in every city. They are manipulating the political landscape to help the far left win. We've known about it. We know it now, and it is still happening. So we'll talk about that. Before we do, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and buy some delicious Cast Brew coffee. 2 weeks till Christmas. And more importantly, Alex Stein's Primetime Grind 2 times caffeine is being discontinued. That's right. We've sold out of nearly every bag, and I believe there may be around 100 or so bags left. If you go to castbrew.com and want to get this crazy bag of Alex Stein's Crazy Face coffee, drink responsibly, of course, we will not be making any more. We will, however, be launching something new with Alex Stein. But in the meantime, if you want to get your hands on this bag, this is your last opportunity. It will be going away. And then we've got, of course, everybody's favorite Appalachian Nights, Low Acidity Graphene Dream. Check it out. Support the show. Use promo code RUMBLE10. And you guys get 10% off every purchase. Let's jump into that story from the New York Times. They say White House attacks Amazon over idea of showing tariffs cost. The White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt attacked the retail giant over a report that suggested Amazon would highlight tariff-related price increases. Amazon said it was not going to happen. Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said it was hostile and political, citing a report disputed by Amazon from Punchbowl News, saying the company would start displaying the exact cost of tariff-related price increases alongside its products. Displaying the import fees would have made clear to American consumers that they are shouldering the cost of President Trump's tariff policies rather than China, as he and his top officials have often claimed would be the case. An Amazon spokesman said the company had considered a similar idea on part of the site, Amazon Hall, which competes with Temu, a Chinese retailer. Temu primarily ships directly to consumers and has begun displaying import charges to reflect the end of a customs loophole that had exempted low-priced items from tariffs. Teams discuss ideas all the time, the spokesman Ty Rogers said in a statement. He said it was never under consideration for the main Amazon site, adding, this was never approved and is not going to happen. Standing beside Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent during a briefing at the White House on Tuesday morning, Ms. Leavitt tore into the retailer. She said that she had just been on the phone with the president about the report, and she asked why Amazon hadn't done such a thing when prices increased during the Biden administration because of inflation. Ms. Leavitt said it was not a surprise coming from Amazon, as she held up a copy of a 2021 article from Reuters, the headline, Amazon partnered with China propaganda arm. Now, I'll tell you what I think. Maybe you all agree with me, maybe you don't. I think that Amazon was intending on doing this because they're, of course, going to be losing money on the deal. And then when Donald Trump calls Carolyn and she calls it out, Amazon says, whoa, we're not doing that. That's a fake news report. We were never planning on doing that. I bet they were. And I bet it's only because Carolyn Leavitt came out, called him out, that they stopped. And I think that's exactly why the White House wanted Carolyn Leavitt to hold this press briefing at 8:30 in the morning. Look, last night, we're on Timcast IRL. We got Elad Eliyahu on the show. He is our White House correspondent. Love him or hate him, he does a good job in the White House. And he says, I got an email, there's going to be an 8:30 a.m. press briefing. I think the White House was intentionally preempting this move that Amazon was going to make because, listen, when Donald Trump makes these moves, and I largely agree with selective tariffs. I don't know how I feel about universal tariffs. It's going to get interesting. But when Donald Trump makes these moves, it costs a lot of people money. Dirty people, evil people. And they don't like that. So they, of course, want to pass the brunt and the blame onto Donald Trump. Now, putting tariff pricing on Amazon won't do anything for Amazon. If a pair of shoes costs $100, but now the tariffs, it's $245, you're either going to buy them or you're not. Putting tariff pricing literally just says it's Trump's fault your shoes cost more money. Now, I've been tracking this stuff. I've seen a bunch of reports from small business forums and users that don't seem overtly partisan, but probably default lib. I saw one story. It was a forum written by an individual, and maybe they're fake. I don't know. Excuse me. where they were saying that the normal cost for a good they sold as a reseller who takes supplies. And let me clarify. This was a forum post from someone who says some of the components we get come from China, not the core goods. So this wasn't a company that's buying a product made in China and then reselling it. It's a company that assembles a product in America, but gets certain components of the product from China. I'm not sure exactly what the product was. The point they were making was with the tariffs on these goods, it's going to increase the cost of everything they're doing, not just a 145% increase, but substantially more than that. A $200 product could go up to $700 because of the various components they have to get. Understand this. If in China, if they purchase resources from the U.S., so let's say they're going to buy steel in America. I mean, maybe they don't, but let's just say something like wood. Okay, here, let's do this. They do buy wood from us. Skateboarding is the example I always use. It's the easiest because I actually know it. So you've got North American rock maple. It's in the Pacific Northwest and Canada. In China, they will buy the wood from us, make skateboards, send them back to us. It's the stupidest thing imaginable. It seems like a huge waste of time and effort, but that's what they do. Why? The labor is so cheap. But hold on. That means China, which is a tariff on the U.S. about 100 and some odd %, when they buy that lumber from the U.S., double the price. Then they make the skateboard, send it back, double that price again. That cost will be massive. A skateboard that costs $60 is going to end up, let's say it's $30 to manufacture. So first, you've got the wood costs. So if it was going to be $30, now it's $60. Then you're sending it back at $145. Now it's $80, $90 plus the margin on top. A $60, $70 skateboard might jump up to $150 to $200 a piece. You know what's going to happen? They're going to stop making them. Now, to be honest, I am absolutely in favor of that, and I love that Trump is doing it. But universal tariffs, literally on everything, some things can't be sourced solely in the United States. I understand what Trump is doing, but here's the fear. CBS News reports China exports to U.S. plunge as tariffs hit, leading some experts to warn of product shortages. I'll tell you now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is bad news for Trump if he doesn't have a plan. Now, I will respect that Donald Trump seems to, and often, has a plan, but it may be loose. Who knows? He seems to know what he's doing to a certain degree, but, people like to play this game where they think a plan means you know exactly what will happen, when it's going to happen. No, a plan means you have contingencies in place in case a variety of things happen. Right now, in aggregate, Donald Trump's approval rating is -7. I roll my eyes at this because you've got NPR, ABC, CNN, the New York Times, and CBS, all for some reason for this time span, having Trump double digits negative. The corporate press, shocker, has Donald Trump negative. But if you take a look at Qantas, Rasmussen, RMG Research, Trump's doing much better. To be fair, Economist also has Trump -9. But Rasmussen, I trust them. They're at -4. And that's not good for the president, but it's not the apocalypse. And when you actually do these focus groups, you find that Trump ain't doing that bad. Now, here's why I tell you I largely think this is complete insanity, and I don't care. I don't care about the polls, and I'll tell you why. I will respect, to a certain degree, polls in aggregate. Some polls I find are interesting only relative to themselves. The reason I cite Rasmussen, Newsweek says Donald Trump approval rating dropped 7 points with GOP pollster. Apparently, Newsweek doesn't know how to do math because they say this. On April 1st, 51% of respondents said they approve of Trump's job performance. Today, it's at 47. Okay, that's not 7. Okay, let me from 51 to 47 is 4 points. See, -4. Yeah, he's down 4, not 7, but sure. The reason why this matters is because Rasmussen uses the same system. So all that really matters is polls relative to themselves and potentially aggregate polling. So if Rasmussen consistently does a poll every week or whatever, and they give you those numbers, you can trust the movement of those numbers because they're polling in much the same way each time. So you will see a general shift in public perception of Donald Trump, whether they approve of him. But for one poll, it makes sense. Rasmussen had Trump up at the beginning of the month. By the end of the month, he is down by 4 points. Again, not the apocalypse. But what's insane is that RMG might have Trump up 1 And then literally in the same time period, Fox News has him down 11. I'm sorry, that just doesn't make any sense. You can have Daily Mail showing Trump up 8, and then for the same time period, Daily Mail has him up 8. And for the same time period, Daily Kos and Civics has him -7. Yo, that's a massive swing. Okay, that makes literally no sense. So I stress this again. We really don't know. What I can say, my friends, is that we are in an administrative civil war, a cold civil war, call it whatever you want. Conflict is happening, and there are people who are trying to seize power. If Donald Trump does take action that results in shortages, or he cannot alleviate shortages that are not his fault, whatever fault might be, he's in trouble. Really is. Food shortages are major components in conflict. And you will see a lot of people in this country livid if they can't buy their milk, bread, and eggs. Now, I go back to that rumor that was circulating about how the CEOs warned Trump. Big box stores like Walmart and Target, even places like Lowe's and Home Depot, are going to have empty shelves because of these tariffs. So we'll see. CBS News says leading experts are warning of product shortages. Take a look at this from Reason. How tariffs could cause shortages in American stores. A sharp decline in ocean freight from China during April is a sign of the supply chain issues that will begin hitting in May. The question is, what is made in China and what do we make from those products? Food we largely produce here. California is a massive food producer, but we do import some things from other countries. Not so much China, but we do get vitamins and drugs manufactured in China, which is absolutely insane. So we'll see. Now, Ray Dalio, the billionaire, has issued a warning. The international world order is on the brink of breaking down. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio is once again sounding the alarm. The international order is on the verge of a breaking point, and President Donald Trump's aggressive use of tariffs is accelerating the unraveling of global trade and capital flows, according to the billionaire investor. You know, I think I actually have his post on X right here, and we'll read it directly. It's titled, "It's Too Late. The Changes Are Coming." I don't think Trump has anything to do with it. I think that this problem has been bubbling up for some time. Let me warn you of this, my friends. They're calling it the demographic cliff. There are not enough 18-year-olds about to enter the market to sustain colleges and new rentals, provide low-skilled labor. The system is going to implode. Now, whose fault is it? Well, I'd say partly it's our fault. We, the American people, sat by as these problems were brewing. And I don't think people realize this is still a product of the housing crash. Around 2007, 2008, people stopped having babies because the economy imploded. Whose fault was that? Yeah, it was the banks. It was the Federal Reserve. It was the destructive political class that was extracting from us and just sitting back as the Titanic was about to slam into an iceberg. The problems of those years, have not gone away. We are looking at a fertility crash. So let me tell you something. When Democrats for 30 years have opened our borders, given away our manufacturing base to foreign countries, while encouraging young people not to have children, to get abortions, to fight climate change by never having kids, by claiming the world is overpopulated already, they have created a recipe which spells disaster. The millennial generation didn't have enough kids. And so, and additionally, as they were supposed to be having kids, millennials, and hey, I'm right in this camp too. I only had my kid this year and I'm 39. I'm an old man. I know all the older people are saying, Tim, you're not old, but no, come on, let's be real. 39 is way old to be having a kid. And so you've got millennials who are supposed to be having kids in their early to mid 20s. They didn't do it. So 20 years ago, when millennials were supposed to be having kids, they stopped. So with this demographic cliff coming, there is a shortage of labor. The Democrats try replacing the lost labor with mass migration of low-skill immigrants, but it doesn't work. It wasn't working. Even Ro Khanna, a Democrat, said it did not work. So what do we end up with? It's too late. The changes are coming. Now, I see Donald Trump making these moves, not because he's a crazy man who wants to burn down the global order. I mean, maybe he does a little bit, but he is reversing this trend He is trying to encourage people to have babies. It's called the, the woman bonus or the baby bonus. Have a kid, get $5,000. Not enough. Not enough. You need to say, we are cutting income taxes for married couples with 2 kids. No more income tax at the federal level. Do it. But I fear it's too late, because even having kids today is not going to be enough to alleviate the fact that there is not enough labor. Even in Charlestown, West Virginia, I was mentioning this. You got stores closing down, not for lack of sales, but for lack of labor. They can't find anybody to do the job. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to do the job. So nobody does. So they can't be open. People want to eat the delicious food at these various restaurants, but they don't have anybody who will do the work. Now, Ray Dalio says the changes are coming, and he says it's Trump's fault. But I think this shows the ignorance and the short-term thinking of many of these individuals. That is, these problems have been brewing for a very long time, and now they're about to hit. Dalio says, some people believe that tariff disruptions will settle down as much more negotiations happen and greater thought is given to how to structure them to work in a sensible way. However, I am now hearing from a large and growing number of people who are having to deal with these issues that it's already too late. For example, many exporters to the United States and importers from other countries that trade with the U.S. are saying they had to greatly reduce their dealings with the U.S., recognizing that whatever happens with tariffs, these problems won't go away, and that radically reduced interdependencies with the U.S. is a reality that has been planned for. Most obviously, American producers and investors in China. Chinese producers and investors in China that deal with Americans, American producers and investors in the United States that deal with the Chinese, and Chinese producers. Okay, we get it. Regardless of what the next round of trade negotiations are like, while this need to minimize U.S.-China interdependence and worry about conflict is now broadly recognized, this view is now becoming more commonly believed by most people in most countries who are dealing with most issues related to trade relations, capital markets relations. My guy, Ray, you're not a writer. Okay, that was convoluted to say the least. But let's continue. Though not yet fully realized, it is also increasingly being realized, that the United States' role as the world's biggest consumer of manufactured goods and greatest producer of debt assets to finance its overconsumption is unsustainable. So assuming that one can sell and lend to the U.S. and get paid back with hard dollars on their U.S. debt holdings is naive thinking. So other plans have to be made. He says, more simply, enormous trade and capital imbalances are creating unsustainable conditions and major risks of being cut off, so they must come down. Excessive imbalances, deglobalization, smaller trade and capital imbalances. I love this narrative. You know why? Because if my good friend here simply listened to Alex Jones 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you'd know all of this. I got to give a shout out to my boy AJ over here. I remember 15 some odd years ago, prisonplanet.com, whatever, InfoWars, he was talking about exactly these issues. Here's the problem. The U.S. makes nothing, okay? Not literally, we do make stuff. We export culture and we make movies. But the U.S. is buying products on credit cards with places like China. China then says, we're going to hold U.S. dollars, effectively debt against U.S. labor that we can use at some point. Hold on there a minute. The U.S. government then with the financial crisis devalues the dollar. So if we buy 10 hours of labor from China, which for us is cheap, China then says we have, let's just say they charge, I don't know, $1 an hour. China then says we have $10 to spend in the United States. $10 can buy me one Big Mac meal, right? That's what I got. I give you 10 hours of labor from Chinese peasants and I get a Big Mac. Sound good? Sound good. Well, while they're holding on to that debt, the U.S. devalues the currency. So within a year or two, China's going, whoa. This $10 bill can't even buy a cheeseburger anymore. I traded you something for something, but this dollar is worthless. Every year it becomes worth less and less. So what's the point of having it? So instead, what do? As the U.S. overconsumes and buys on credit cards, China turns around immediately and buys our land from us. This system is completely unsustainable. And at the same time, you've got progressives telling Americans, don't have babies. You're a white supremacist if you do. And now we have a demographic collapse. We've got a population collapse, a labor shortage, and the progressives' response, open the borders, let everybody come in. Okay, so their response is cause problems that the U.S. It's you know what's funny is Alex Jones called it problem reaction solution. The Democrats created the problem, the progressives created the problem, and then with the reaction, these devastation in the labor market, they offer their solution, which is mass migration, unfettered mass migration, which ultimately results in the collapse of the American moral tradition and history. We start seeing statues get torn down, laws get changed, street names get changed, and Trump is trying to reverse course. But maybe it's too late. Dalio says, we're on the brink of the monetary order. The domestic, political, and international world orders breaking down due to unsustainable bad fundamentals that can be easily seen and measured by anybody with eyes to see who's been paying attention, mind you. He says, too, the progression of events leading to these increasing disorders is similar to those that have progressed many times throughout history. Indeed. 3, there's a growing risk that the U.S. imposing these challenges to deal with will increasingly be bypassed by a world of countries that will adapt to these separations. If these circumstances are managed in the best ways, the outcomes will be much better than if they are managed in the worst ways. He says, in my opinion, what would be best is calm, analytical, and coordinated engineering and implementation with the imbalances and the needs for self-sufficiencies treated as shared challenges to produce the beautiful deleveragings and rebalancings that need to take place. For example, as explained in my new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, there's a 3-part, 3% solution to dealing with the U.S. government debt problem that would lead to much better results in the path we appear to be on. Unfortunately, thus far, we haven't seen the better ways and have instead seen disturbing fighting and volatility that are teaching lessons that are leading to irreversible bad consequences. For these reasons, I fear that we are moving beyond the ideal time to be knowledgeable about and properly plan for these big changes in the world order, and believe that investors, policymakers, and other decision makers need to stop undulating their views and positions in reaction to the day-to-day market moves and policy announcements, and instead deal with these big fundamental changes in the world order calmly, intelligently, and ideally cooperatively. I'm going to say this. I hope you all are preparing for the worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Because this problem was coming whether Trump did anything or not. Clearly, the Democratic Party, the liberal economic order, is collapsing. That is the system by which the U.S. has maintained global superiority. It was never going to be permanent. Donald Trump's emergence is not the cause of this. It is a symptom. People were upset with the loss of manufacturing jobs going way back. Look at NAFTA. Michael Moore made a documentary about how we gave away our auto manufacturing to foreign countries and destroyed the Rust Belt. And this led to the populist uprising. It should have been predictable to everyone. And you know what? They largely knew. When you take a look at 2007, 2008, and they outright say, they say it explicitly, people are not having children anymore. Fertility rates are collapsing. There will not be enough 18-year-olds by 2025. What was done to mitigate this? They say Barack Obama was the deporter in chief. Kind of. I believe what the explanation going around is that he was the turner-arounder in chief. They'd call it a deportation if they caught someone at the border and sent them home right away, just kicked them right out of the country. Expedited removal. Okay, technically true. Trump's deportations are a bit different. He shut the border down. So now they're saying he's not deporting enough. Well, I mean, the border is shut down, so ain't nobody coming in. They are arresting people internally and deporting them. Democrats argue this will be the end. And I tell you, this is why Joe Biden and so many other Democrats, when they were asked on the debate stage, would you make crossing the border a civil violation, not a criminal one? They all raised their hands. They know that they have set this country on a course for collision, for disaster. When you look at COVID, when you look at fractional reserve banking, it was impossible for this system to be permanent. I think Donald Trump's trying to save this country. I don't think he's trying to save the global liberal economic order. I think Donald Trump's view is the system is breaking down and we will save of America what we can. Now, people ask, what is it going to look like? With all due respect, Detroit. Yeah. Collapsed houses, abandoned neighborhoods, crime, poverty, extremely high infrastructure costs, dirty water. It'll be, in its own essence, some kind of dark ages for the U.S. Maybe I'm wrong. but I do feel that it is largely political. So we'll see. That'll wrap up the segment for today, but we did have an amazing interview with Jason Fick coming up in just a few hours on this channel. So smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. More to come. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.